Do you need a dose of inspiration and hope? Stay tuned for Reach Out and Live. Welcome to Reach Out and Live, a program of music, scripture, and sermon brought to you each week by the many viewers and members of First-Plymouth Church, Lincoln, Nebraska. Hi, my name's Jim, minister here at First-Plymouth. Now, when we worship together, there's a chance to grow in love and hope. I pray that it may be so for you. The congregation is ready. Let's worship. So we turn now to the good book. We're in Acts chapter 17. And remember with me, the Apostle Paul had an experience of Jesus, a personal spiritual experience of the risen Christ on the Damascus road, and it changed him. He started to walk in the light. He started to go around the Mediterranean rim there, trying to spread that light, the message of Jesus. Here in Acts 17, he's arrived in Athens. Athens, the seedbed of democracy. Athens, where all the great philosophy was taking place. He's standing on Mars Hill, or the scripture calls it the Areopagus. That's in Greek. The Romans called it Mars Hill. He's standing in the same spot that Socrates stood and was indicted for corrupting the youth. This is an amazing moment when Paul looks around the city of Athens, sees a lot of religion, and then decides to preach about a God, well, God that is beyond even religion itself. Listen. Then Paul stood in front of the Areopagus and said, "Athenians, I see how extremely religious you are in every way. For as I went through the city and looked carefully at the objects of your worship, I found among them an altar with the inscription that said, to an unknown God. Well, what you worship as unknown, I now declare to you, this is the God who made the world and everything in it. The God who is Lord of heaven and earth and does not live in shrines made by human hands, as if he needed anything, or he's not served by human hands. God is beyond that. This is the God that gave everyone life and breath. From one ancestor, God made all the nations to inhabit the whole earth, and he allotted the times of their existence and the boundaries of the places where they would live. God made it so everyone would search for God, grope after him, and find him. Though indeed, God is never far from each one of us. For in God we live, move, and have our being. Whoa. He's quoting an ancient poet, but he's using it for his sermon. In God we all live, move, and have our being. Are you getting the mystical power of that? We talk about God as up there or out there. And sometimes we even talk about God within us. He's now saying we are all within God. Look how he's switching the spatial metaphor. We use spatial metaphors for God all the time. We know they're metaphors. We know that God is infinite, and in a quantum universe, there's no up, out, in, or out. Those are just metaphors. But listen to the one he's using. All of reality resides in the mind of God. We are in God. Whoa. Let that discombobulate any easy definition or image you have of God. If you have a definition of God, God is beyond your definition. I hear people use a very common word all the time, the word religion. I do not think they know what it means. Religion. It is, in fact, virtually an inconceivable category. The word religion is so complex, multifaceted, variegated. It covers such an expanse of human endeavor that nobody can define it. It's virtually a trope for an undergrad professor to come into the religion class or anthropology class and tell the students to define the word religion, to make them try to write down a definition. They do that to teach them there is no good definition of religion. Religion is inconceivable. Now, if you ask a Westerner like us to define religion, you will start to hear a pretty typical definition. They'll say, religion? Well, religion is a set of beliefs about a supernatural being whom you want to be in relationship with, and religion has ritual forms of worship and some amount of organization. That's religion. Well, the professors love it if that's what they come up with, because then they can completely subvert that definition very easily. Religion is a set of beliefs. Well, what beliefs? And why is it so many things we call religions actually have no set of beliefs? In Asian religions, they don't function around a set of beliefs at all. Set of beliefs, you think it is? Regarding a God concept or supernatural being? There are religions without the God concept. In fact, Theravadan Buddhism is specifically designed to disabuse you of any notion of God and to focus on this embodied life itself. So there are religions without a God concept. There are religions without sets of beliefs. And even if you're talking about Christians, they disagree about all their beliefs. There's a basic magisterium set of beliefs, but Christians argue about everything. What beliefs? And then the professor takes them into the next level. that the word religion itself, a current Yale scholar is writing much about this, the word religion itself is a modern invention. It's not in our Bible, of course, it's an English word. In our Bible is a Greek word there so complex that Paul was using, we're not sure at all what it refers to. The word religion developed post-Enlightenment. It came from the Latin religare or religere, we're not sure which one, they mean different things. But for a modern person, we developed this idea that religion is some activity that's separate from the rest of culture, separate from business and politics and economics and family life. Religion is a special sphere of activity. Religion, it happens over there. It's a special thing. But in ancient cultures, they had no concept like that. Religion was interwoven with everything. What we call religion now was a way of being in their culture. And the ancient temples, they were banks, they were political arenas, and they were places of worship. There was no secular component in culture. So when we say religion, we're making up something that's a figment of our imagination if we look at the ancient world. But we think we know what religion, you keep using that word. I don't think it means what you think it means. Religion. Scholars will tell you even the word belief has changed. That's fides or pistis in our New Testament. But the word belief prior to the Enlightenment, it meant, when you said you believe in God, it meant you trust God. When it meant you want to commit your heart. When you said you believe in Jesus in the ancient world, you meant you want to give him your heart. You'll commit your life to that way of life. But post-Enlightenment, the word belief changed in English. Now it means some propositional content in your brain that you give your assent to. It changed from believe in Jesus to believe that Jesus is the second person of the Trinity. I believe that Jesus was raised from the dead, or I believe certain beliefs about him rather than belief in him. Religion, we keep using that word. I don't think we know what it means. What do you think we're doing here right now? Let me tell you two stories about religion. In the 1970s, in a neighborhood of San Francisco called the Castro, something incredibly beautiful began to take place. In the 1970s, suddenly love began to flourish in a way this culture hadn't understood. In the 1970s, in the Castro in San Francisco, suddenly you could love who you were born to love. And gay men began to flock to that area of the town. And it was idyllic. People holding hands and falling in love with each other in a way that our culture hadn't mustered the ability to recognize before this. It was like a paradise. Love flourished. But remember with me, in the early 1980s, death made its way into that neighborhood. It's hard for us to remember the horrible nature of the AIDS epidemic in its early years. I have a friend, he's still living, named Jim Matulski. And he was pastor of a little church in the Castro in the 1970s and talked about how wonderful it was. That little church became basically an LGBTQIA community center as well. It was all of community life as well as whatever we think religion is. All was happening in that church. And then when AIDS began, Jim describes, the horror of it. Early on in AIDS, with no cure, they still were trying medicines. The first regime, Freudian slip. The first regimen was 36 pills a day. And so you had to take them at timed intervals. So all around the Castro, suddenly you would hear people's little alarms go off that they were carrying with them when it was time to take the pill. There were 60,000 gay men in San Francisco, and 30,000 of them became immediately infected. 30,000. And the amount of suffering that began to take place. And when you were dying of AIDS in the early 80s, no one would touch you. Everybody was afraid. Even when you died, the funeral directors wouldn't touch your body. Everybody was afraid. And so at Jim's little church, they began to hold services on Sunday morning, and people would walk up, receive the Eucharist, and then they would place a hand on their shoulders and hold it for a moment because nobody was touching them. What is religion? In the midst of these young men dying from what they didn't understand what it was, and part of the suffering was you lost your appetite completely, so you became just emaciated. And in the midst of that suffering, suddenly a man ran for governor that wanted to show he was law and order. And San Francisco had been pretty loose with the marijuana dispensaries around town. If you had a note from your doctor, you could easily get marijuana. And he wanted to show he was about law and order, so he shut down all the marijuana dispensaries in town. What he didn't realize is those men dying, the only way they could get an appetite to eat at all was if they took a little marijuana. All of a sudden, Jim had a deacon in his church. She was about a 60-year-old woman. She had a gay son dying. And she came to him and said, "You don't know what it's like to stay up all night trying to get your son to eat half a bowl of cereal to keep him alive. We've got to get marijuana back to these people somehow." The city council of San Francisco came to my friend and said, "Is there anything your church could do?" He goes, "Well, what? What do you mean?" Well, they decided together that if people donated marijuana to the church, and if they came with a note, it had to be donated. They weren't going to have the church buying any marijuana, but they donated. Then on Sunday mornings at this church, people would come forward, take communion, be touched, and then given a bag of marijuana. What is religion? Religion is somehow that space where love meets the suffering of the world. That's what religion is. Let me tell you another story. Religion, you keep using that word. I don't think it means what we think it means. In 1940, the Germans had overtaken France. Now it's Vichy France. And they began hunting down the Jews in that territory. There was a little church in a village called Les Chambons-sur-Lignon. I don't speak French. That's maybe close. Little village church. And the pastor of that church saw what was taking place. People being hunted down. People being swept away. And he said, "We got to do something. I don't know what being a Jew is, but I know what a human being is, and we're going to do something." So what is religion? That little church in that village, it began to bring in any Jews that were trying to come through that area. And in the church, they would falsify the records and create illegal documents. What is religion? They would create illegal documents, and they would help create handoffs to try to get people to the border to escape. That little church. The Congregational Church in America, First-Plymouth included, in 1941 began to hear about it, and we started sending money to this little village church. And then somehow what that church was doing, the surrounding villages on the plateau, that village was like 5,000 people. The surrounding villages added up to about 24,000 people. Something about the conscience of that church began to change the community. And suddenly that whole ring of villages were all in on this. They saved 5,000 Jews together. What is religion? This is Martin Luther King weekend. And if you remember when he was sitting in that Birmingham jail, he wrote a letter to all the churches in Birmingham. And he told them, if you lose your moral compass, if you do not follow your conscience, you have nothing. What is religion? Something that when it knows it holds the higher truth, it begins to hold the conscience for the wider community. It starts bringing in a wider amount of people to hold that higher truth. You might remember when we began to relieve the medical debt of homes right around the church. You must remember. We were buying up the medical debt in each home around the church, and it was usually $2,000 or $3,000, and it was going to take a lot of money. We ended up buying up the medical debt of 400 homes, and we thought, this is First-Plymouth doing its thing. Suddenly, the wider community just started throwing money in. They just saw it, and that's the conscience. And what is religion? I no longer worry about defining it. I just make sure to know it when I see it. What is religion? And I no longer, it's the preacher being honest, I no longer fully equate Jesus with any religion. He's a truth that is so pure that whatever we mean by religion, he can't be encapsulated totally by it. No, in fact, whatever you think is wrong with religion, it's Jesus that can fix it. If you think that religion becomes mean to gay people or women or people of any diversity, and it can, well then Jesus can fix that. Jesus didn't say a thing against gay people, and he treated women with an unusual respect. If you see anything wrong with religion, it's Jesus that can fix it. If you see religion getting all caught up in doctrine and dogma, Jesus didn't teach a lot of doctrine. He taught the truth. He offered a way of life. You see religion become hypocritical or irrelevant. Jesus was never either of those two things. His words matched his actions matched his words, full integrity, full relevancy, because he can change your life, our life, the world. I don't know what religion is, but I know who Jesus is. Let's follow him. It's wonderful that we could worship together. Do you know you could join our services live every Sunday morning at 9, 10:30, or 11:57 on Facebook, YouTube, or our website. And all of that is made possible by gifts from people like you. If you believe that an open-minded, loving congregation can help change the world, then consider making a donation. It will help us increase the love of God and neighbor in both Nebraska and the world. Last year, First-Plymouth Church, with your help, bought and forgave over $600,000 of medical debt for struggling families. The FP Just Neighbors initiatives help with the cost of laundry at local laundromats and help fill our neighbors' gas tanks at special volunteer events. And every month, First Plymouth members help feed the neighborhood by acting as a food drop location for the Lincoln Food Bank. There are so many ways you could help us help others. If you would like to join our Sunday live streams or just learn more about our church, go to firstplymouth.org or find us on Facebook and YouTube. And so now we have worshiped together. And it's not my hope that this has strengthened your grasp of doctrine or dogma or creed. Rather, it's my hope it has opened your heart to the mystery and love that is God, so that all together we can reach out and live.
Tune in again next week for another edition of Reach Out and Live.